In Dungeons and Dragons, there is a lot of lore, and I personally love digging deep into pretty much all of it. I do fully admit that there's quite a bit that I've read and have forgotten, and likely much that while I read it years upon years ago, I've likely since misremembered it. Thankfully, there are quite a few folks out there that have a keen mind to help keep all of this lore in our current lexicon. GameMasters here, and I recently dropped a video covering some Easter eggs found in the new 5.5 Dungeon Masters Guide. One of those Easter eggs was a deity named Murlynd, and in that video, I cited that Murlynd may have possibly been the first Artificer, that his first appearance was seen in the module, hold on, EX2, I had to look back, sorry. EX2, The Land Beyond the Magic Mirror. A few months later, we would see him again in Dragon Magazine issue 71. In the EX module, Murlynd is a fairly powerful magic user, and in Dragon Magazine issue 71, he is a quasi-deity. These both came out in 1983, and in the description of him, each publication explained that he used technology and would often mix in technological terms when casting spells. This, in turn, would allow him to cast or conjure to work in his spells or conjurings to work in a slightly different way. For example, let's say he casts the spell Create Water. While adding the technological term to the spell's verbal component, he may find that a pipe has manifested up from the ground, and that is what is actually spewing the water instead of just materializing the water out of air. Fast forward a few years to the late 1990s, and we would see that Murlynd had ascended to full-on godhood of being the hero god of magical technology, granting to those that followed him the ability to make and use pistols and other strange engineered inventions. All of this is evidence that Murlynd was a bona fide artificer, and while I hold fast to that thought, I do have to admit that the term Artificer and Murlynd originally never were associated with each other. At the intro of this video, of the one we're watching now, the one you're watching now, the one I'm talking to, sorry, I spoke that there were others out there that are doing a mighty fine task of keeping the lore of Dungeons and Dragons alive. And while I do my best, I gotta give a nod to fellow YouTuber and friend Aten of We Love TTRPGs. In the original video that I did covering Murlynd, Aten pointed out to me that the Artificer was actually spoken about in depth back in Dragon Magazine issue number 1, which came out back in June of 1976. Should you enjoy deep dives into the lore and history of Dungeons and Dragons, I highly recommend you checking out his channel. Traditionally, we were provided with the basis of the Artificer in the second edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons book, the player's options, spells, and magic, which gave players the option to play as the technological type of wizard. But what we are going to look at now is the original Artificer as it first appeared in this magazine. Now, regarding the original Artificer, whatever you may be familiar with, get ready for something unlike anything found in the second edition Player's Options, Spells, and Magic book, or even in the third edition or 3.5's anything that has ever offered up. Forget about this new Unearthed Arcana supplement for 5.5 Dungeons & Dragons, because what we are about to look at is going to change everything. And honestly, I kind of think it's going to convince some of you to want to play this original version. I'm specifically talking to you here, Seraphus. Back in 1976, found on page 8 of Dragon issue number 1, James M. Ward wrote an article called Magic and Science. Are they compatible in D&D? It goes on to talk about how Dungeons & Dragons can easily be a world where magic items and spells could be derived from technology and science. For example, a wand of lightning is simply a static electricity generator, or that magic potions are advanced chemistry formulas. James then talks about a race that he has created that transported their island to another dimension, and he called this race Artificers. They made use of a high degree of technology and were very aware of magic, and actually created several different devices that could counter any magical effect. Now, he admits that the Artificer was created to go up against player characters that had become too powerful and ones that needed a challenge. But he never explicitly stated that players cannot play as Artificers. In fact, it's hinted at pretty much in this article that you can. James offers to us 3 devices that are used all the time by Artificers. Oh, and I got to point out, too, that magic and abilities worked a little bit different way back when. So by today's standards, some of what we're about to go over, the devices, they may be incredibly fun to make use of. Device 1 resembles a modern-day pistol in description, a small catapult made of unbreakable crystal and spring steel. It can project out to 50 yards, and upon contact with the target, the sphere will emit its stored power. He presents to us 6 different colors of spheres, each with a different power. Firing off a red sphere would cause a 15-foot circle of heat to erupt that would be so hot that it would melt everything in the area. Plus, there would be no magic saving throw. Loading up and firing a black sphere would cause a 15-foot circle of disintegrating damage, just as the spell itself would cause. With this, you do get a magic saving throw to try to mitigate that damage. Making use of a clear sphere has it emit in a 15-foot circle nullifying energy, which would destroy the usefulness of any magic item forever. Again, there's no save there. So that's pretty nasty. Firing a brown sphere would cause the illusion of a maze to pop up, and those in a 15-foot circle are going to have to move through that mental maze to free themselves. Again, no save. Shooting off a purple sphere would create a 15-foot circle of death, exactly like the spell of the same name, and like the black sphere, you do get a magic saving throw here. The last bit of ammunition is the silver sphere. Upon contact, this sphere will emit a wall of synthetic crystal with the resistance of diamond to physical forces. The wall will reach up to a maximum height of 60 feet, will sprawl out to a maximum of 120 feet in length, and will be 10 feet thick. Device number 2 is a blue sphere that hovers beside the Artificer. They come in 3 different sizes, with each size being based on the level or rank of the Artificer that's using it. The largest blue sphere measures 3 feet in diameter, and then it drops down to 2 feet for the next one, and then 1 foot for the third one, with the smaller diameter being the one that is attributed to the highest ranking Artificer. Each blue sphere can shoot 2 beams of the Artificer's choosing. The largest sphere, and keep in mind this would be attributed to the lowest ranking Artificer. It can take 10 points of damage. It can absorb 10 points of damage. It can shoot Heat Ray, which would cause 3d6 damage. It can heal 3 points of damage per melee round, or it can use a Displacer Ray, which acts like the Displacer Cloak. Or it can also act as a 20-point damage shield. Dropping down to the medium-sized blue sphere, and again this one was the 2 foot in diameter, it can absorb 15 points of damage. Its heat ray damage increases to 5 total dice. Its healing ray increases up to 5 points healed per melee round, and it can still use the Displacer Ray. It can act as a 30-point damage shield, provides an anti-magic shield, or anti-magic shell rather, and can also shoot a Fear Ray. Then you have the smallest blue sphere, the one that's 1 foot diameter. And keep in mind, this one is reserved for the highest ranking Artificer. And we can see that it can absorb 20 hit points of damage. Its heat ray increases to 7 total dice. It has a restoration ray, keeps the displacer ray, sees its damage shield increase to 40 points, has the anti-magic ray and fear ray, but it also adds an anti-sphere ray and a charm monster ray. Now, a word to note here, the anti-sphere ray negates the effects of the spheres that the Artificer's pistol would shoot, or those of another Artificer's hovering blue sphere. Oh, and the restoration ray would regenerate any being that is dead or dying, and always will do so if it is applied within 1 hour of that character's or NPC's death. The third device provided to us in this article also touts it to be the most powerful. It's an analogic computer. Yeah, a computer. While we don't know if it's a massive desktop or a laptop or even a computer the size of a cell phone, what we are told is that it has a heat core power source and is able to analyze and counteract any spell in it. It's over on page 10. Okay. It can analyze up to 100 spells, and its primary form of attack is to analyze the hit points of its enemies and emit a double amount heat ray. Although it is pointed out that the computer has a weakness in that it strictly follows its program, which could potentially allow more intelligent beings to use logic to get around it. In other words, it breaks common spells down into a command, and anyone that is of a technological mind could go in and rewrite that code to either backfire or do something otherwise harmless. And that, folks, is how the Artificer was introduced to the world back in June of 1976 in Dragon Magazine issue number 1. It's chock full of other fun articles, including the Boule, which is something that we're going to chat about in a future video, so be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, just so that you don't miss that. I want to thank Aten for pointing this out to me, and I want to thank all of you for watching, and I especially need to thank my YouTube and Patreon supporters for their contributions to this channel. It is because of this amazing community that I am able to take time to research and make these kind of videos. So again, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you would like to check out how to become a YouTube member or a Patreon supporter, I'll leave a link down below. I'd also encourage you to join the GameMasters Discord, as honestly, quite a few of the videos that I make come direct from there as well, the ideas that we bounce around and chat about. And I'll also leave that link down below. Dungeons & Dragons, the lore, is always fun to dive into, as it provides an opportunity to see where the current version's inspiration has come from. Many times, I'll end up using a hybrid of what once was and what currently is in my games. Mainly because I like to get super creative and I can appreciate all editions of this game. That said, I can assure you that I'll be writing out and fleshing out in detail the Artificer found in this first issue of the Dragon Magazine for my players to have access to at my table, just because honestly I kind of find it rather cool. What are some old school elements of the past that you've found to be much more fun and that you've ultimately ended up incorporating into your current game? Let me know down in the comments, and until next our paths cross, let your creativity flow freely.